921st meeting of the MSAD27 Board of Directors. Roll call, please.
Keith Johnrow.
Here.
Shannon Lugman.
Here.
Abby Pooler.
Here.
Dave Susi.
Yep.
Tanya Wazin.
Here.
Gary Sibley.
Here.
Sarah Ashley.
Here.
Connor Pelletier.
Here.
Sadie is not.
No adjustments?
We have no adjustments.
Period of public participation. Do we have anybody on the sign-up sheet? Mr. Connor, check, please. Thank you. Approval of the meeting minutes for meeting number 920 from December 5. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Sarah,
Second.
seconded by Abigail. Any discussion? All in favor? None opposed? Very good. Gary abstained.
I weren't here.
That's covered. Let's see. Approval of the financial statements for November and December 2022. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Gary. Seconded by Shannon. Any discussion about the financial statement? Ms. Lucy, do you have anything in particular you'd like to bring up in regards to that?
No, everything is going according to plan so far.
Very good, thank you. Very good. All in favor of approving the financial statements for November, December? Good. Financial statements approved. We have a presentation, Fort Kent Elementary School and CHS VRMS leadership teams, school-wide goals for 2022-23. Mid-year update.
So when the leadership teams were getting ready this year, I did let them know that there would be 2 presentations to the school board this year. This one being the mid-year presentation, just to kind of update you on where we are with respect to the school-wide goals in each building. And then again, at the end of the year, where hopefully we have met our goals. I did give the board in advance the SMART goals that each school had created, 2 SMART goals for their school-wide goals this year. And because I have it queued up behind me, I will start with CHS and VRMS to begin the presentation. And I told them each 2 hours only, each school, so.
All right, so this is our presentation.
Introduce yourselves.
Oh, okay. So I'm Mary Pelletier. I teach VRMS middle school math.
Lori was in English to 10th and 11th graders.
Leslie Markey, I teach high school science. I'm also the head alpine coach, to which we had practice.
She came in uniform.
Yeah.
And John Coletta, principal.
All right, so to determine the school-wide goals, we surveyed the middle school and high school staff to find out the greatest need from the point of view of each staff member. We want to find out from them what they thought the greatest need was. There was no definitive front runner, so we went back to them again and we compiled the data and we took a vote at the staff meetings. And we took the 2 most important ones, and it came down to just asking, like at the middle school staff meeting, it was mostly just discussing it and saying, hey, what do you think is most important?
Well, we felt like attendance was something we could work on, and we also felt that grading practices was something we could work on to consolidate, because in using proficiency-based, especially during COVID, when we were kind of in our own little cabins there, we thought it would be good to calibrate, get back together, talk about grading practices again. So that's the second one.
Do you want to take on the next slide? So essentially, the top one that we looked at was looking at creating consistency, cutting the clutter. the last 5 years not only have been different, right, in education, but also we have different students coming to us now. And so in order to really kind of hone our craft in, we needed to figure out what's most important and how can we be consistent for our students, but also for ourselves. And that was our first one, creating consistency by cutting the clutter to increase student engagement and foster student success. And really just open doors to start discussion again.
And lo and behold, I'm everybody's favorite person, just kidding, not, because I read a book over the summer that dealt specifically with that. It was called Teaching with Clarity. Proficiency-based, really clarifying our learning goals, our targets, our proficiency targets. And I'm like, oh, this would be great. And we're using that, we are having a discussion as well.
I don't know what the rest of the staff would say, but we think it's great.
We think it's great. It's really great though, really.
And then we want to focus on tightening up attendance because over the last couple of years, that wasn't a big focus because of COVID. So students need to get into tightening up coming to school. Being here is important. We had gotten them back into being here, and that slacked off a little bit, and so we need to get them back here.
And you know, key to success is attendance. And if they're not here, they're not getting the initial instruction. So we felt that was super important.
Yep.
And we also had some glitches as far as, I think, Power School connecting with, the tech center and a little bit with our alt ed center to make sure that we were all on the same page, so that when they were absent, that we knew they were absent and their parents knew they were absent. Because after every period, if any of your parents here, you notice that if your child is not in class, you'll get a phone call telling them that they're not in class, and sometimes that wasn't happening. And so we just wanted to make sure that everybody was in the know, parents, teachers, students, admin, so that we all, knew where our kids were, which is a big safety issue as well. So that part of it was trying to get Power School lined up as well.
Absolutely. All right, so our highlights of professional development early releases, we were reading Teaching of Clarity. We had our Teacher Wellness Day, creating consistency across the grade levels and content areas. That's a big one because we're trying to have students have more consistency across grade levels and across content areas by the language that we use with them, the standards that we use with them.
We know that those things will be different as they progress along the pipeline there, down the road, to K to 12. But the verbiage is really important. And do they understand what we mean when we say explain or relate and so we just want to make sure that we're using common language. So when they go to Leslie's class or they come to my class, they're like, oh, okay, this is what she means here, or this is what he means here. And that gives them, if they have that consistency, then it's not like, we know that they have 6 different periods a day, but it shouldn't be relearning the wheel every time they have a different period. So that would help them with their success.
I think one of the greatest things that we did this year was reinstating our PLCs, which allow us to have these rich conversations and leave a meeting during an early release and be able to come back to it a month later and know exactly where we left off and know, what our goals are and what we're working on. And it's really cool because we're working with a woman from Great Schools Partnership who's kind of guiding us. And it's nice because not only do we have a common goal, but each group has their own goal, I guess, and their own twist on it, which allows some flexibility. Like in science, we're really focusing on science practices. So instead of asking students to memorize the process of photosynthesis, it's like create a model. And so in science now, it's more creating models and more of doing science rather than just science, regurgitating science. So that's one thing that we are working on, and by doing that, we've gone back, looked at our standards, looked at the rubrics for science practices, but we also started looking at assessments, and something we did really like last Friday, which was really eye-opening, was we looked, every leader brought an assessment to their PLC, and we kind of showed how we scored it, what we were asking, what the rubric was, and everyone around the table sat quietly and kind of scored it in their own mind. And then we had a discussion, like, are we all on the same page when we're assessing students? And that was really eye-opening. So that was one thing that.
Eye-opening and powerful, because now, like, I can go back and say, okay, this is what I can do with this assessment, and also too, you know, how am I helping my students go on to an associate's class and so on, and so that is so important, and having the time to do that is just, it's so powerful, and so we really, you know,
Yep. And
appreciate
in
that
math,
time.
in math, we've looked at our scoring rubrics. We've looked at our assessments on Friday. We are all scoring the same way. So that was really powerful to say that all the math teachers are scoring the same way. We've looked at the math practice standards, and we're incorporating those into our content standards so that we make sure that the students are being scored on the math practice standards every year. So that's good. But we're looking at the language in our in the math pact, we're looking at the language so that we can make sure that that's incorporated every year, so that the students are learning the language, so that that's covered.
And what's really great is we had kind of wrapped up a lot of that work with our standards and stuff before COVID, and then we were working with it, and then, you know, for a year or so, and then COVID hit, and we were on our little course. So it's a great time to just kind of revisit. Is this still relevant? How are these, you know, how are these rubrics working, and how can we, you know, refine them?
In the last 5 years, you've also had a lot of new staff, so this kind of brings them into the fold, checking out, you know, what everyone's doing, and get us all on the same page, which is really important. The big thing is trying to use the common vocabulary so kids understand exactly what we're asking them, so they're not going into a test or an assessment going, oh, you know, they might know this material, but because of the language we're using, they might not understand. So we're trying to really clarify things, and so that, you know, kids in science always know going up that this is what's expected of me when a teacher asks this. But then we're also going to get together in our grade levels, which meet monthly, and try to get our grade levels to take as much of that as they can together. Because like Lori said, there's 6 periods a day. That's a lot, you know, for kids to come in, and it's a different, you know, way of thinking, and you know, every teacher does things a little differently. So the more that we can make things similar on our kids, the easier it's going to be for them in the long run.
We made a big push with our argument piece with, you know, evident, you know, oh my God, claim, evidence, and reasoning. And so with working with that in biology and in social studies and in my class, it's not new. You know, they see it all the way around.
And they started at the middle school, so they see it going up from middle school to high school. So, right. Our future plans: once the content level work has been completed, we will transition to grade level work and cross-curricular work, so that can be interwoven throughout. And then we'll work to lateral collaboration, so that we can continue that.
That's to make sure that we're hitting all the standards and we're not necessarily repeating standards. And we haven't done that in ages. And it's like really, I mean, the last time we did that, some of you might, Betty Pelletier was our leader. Like, that makes a little while there. So it's time to figure out, you know, and it's just to have the time to do it. It is just super awesome.
Middle school, we work on it a little bit because we do our main events,
But it's that whole K all the way up.
Yeah.
And so just to really pinpoint what standards we are hitting, what are we missing? Because there's probably stuff that we're missing because we're not putting our heads all together.
right. Okay.
So our attendance, you know, last year we had some issues. You know, like I mentioned earlier, we had a problem communicating with the St. John Valley Tech Center to get accurate, you know, when our kids go there in the morning and the afternoon. You know, we didn't have sometimes, you know, totally accurate counts, you know, with the kids that were there or weren't there, okay? And then also we had some teachers that, you know, maybe weren't taking attendance consistently. And then, you know, when they do take it, sometimes they might have missed somebody or or listen to somebody says, yeah, Joey wasn't here the last period, so he must be here. But really, Joey got dismissed or something like that. So it was trying to take accurate attendance and then take it in a timely manner at the beginning of the period every day. Seems pretty easy, but it's, when you've got, 30 staff members taking attendance, it gets complicated. So how do we resolve these issues is that right on the bus, so we take attendance twice. So our bus driver takes attendance, and then we bring it right into Cindy at that point. And then also it's followed up at the St. John Valley Tech Center, so that we've got that problem pretty much squared away. And then since the beginning of the year, on a monthly basis, we've been asking, and I do a weekly memo to the staff, and at different meetings we'll just say, hey, don't forget, just keep this train rolling here. Let's keep our attendance, right off the bat, and make sure you double check it, be accurate. And then if Cindy doesn't get, especially the morning one is really important, and the one right after lunch is really important. So if she doesn't get by 8:30, she'll go ahead and call to that classroom and get that teacher to take attendance, and then right after that, the calls go out to different parents, and also Cindy then takes, this is an added thing, there's an absentee report or an attendance report that goes out to every class, and then we ask teachers to double check that. If there's any discrepancies, to please let Cindy know. And we've been finding people that maybe have been skipping out or actually that were there, so that we've been catching mistakes that way. So that's been
And not just that, but I know as a teacher, that attendance report is helpful, because then if I have a student who's on there, I can check and say, oh, so-and-so's out. If I need to, I can email them or whatever. But it's helpful to know what students are here or not. So, yeah.
That used to be done in the old days. Someone would walk around and give us that. But tightening this up is
Yeah.
really good.
Yep.
Okay, so how does it improve attendance? So it's, once again, the email really helps. Teachers, once again, are getting back to us in a timely fashion. Okay, if there's any errors, we've been able to catch errors, and we really have brought down, I don't want to say this knocking on wood, but I don't think we've had any complaints from parents this year saying, I thought my child was in school today, and where is he or she? Okay, that's huge, and we haven't had that, and so we're hoping it will continue, as it's going. And we could also tell, because sometimes if somebody gets away with skipping a class, and we didn't know about it, and all of a sudden a week goes by, and Joey hasn't been in class all week. This way, we're double checking, we're catching those quickly, and once students get caught for skipping, they're not going to do it again. So it's really been so far so good, and hope that continues for the rest of the year. I think just as long as we're consistent, we should be okay.
And with absences, absences happen, but one thing that we implemented during COVID was Google Classroom. And so any student, especially at the middle high school, any student that misses class knows the drill, that Google Classroom is there with all the material they need, so.
With videos.
And the big thing is to help them understand that, it's important. It's your responsibility. Like if I'm absent, I have to prepare. So if they're absent, they have to get in the habit of, finding out what was taken up, or go, work with a friend and go over the material that was covered, or work with us, or whatever it takes. But that it's still, learning takes place when they're not here. It doesn't stop because they're not here. And I think that is a big piece to work on in the future.
Yeah, I think overall, though, since COVID's been over, I think students are pretty happy coming back to school. I think they realize, how much they really enjoy coming to school. And so I think attendance overall is up there, but there's always a few that, are problematic that we, continue to work on through our attendance committee that we meet. And Sylvia Dow Harvey, who's that coordinator, does an incredible job of keeping up with students, and so that we can, try to get them here where they'll learn best.
Any questions?
I have to ask a question.
No?
I have to ask a question.
Oh, go ahead. Okay.
You mentioned that the students are different. The students we're getting in the past 5 years are different. I know this might be delicate, but how would you characterize the difference? What's different about them?
They're more technology-centered.
Glued to their iPhone?
Oh, yeah.
Is that a bad thing?
Easily distractible.
Easily distractible.
Okay.
It's hard to pay attention, you know, we have to really kind of be dynamic, and we can't do the same thing all period, because life wouldn't be too nice for them or us. And just emotional, that's a big one.
I would say three, in my head, just three big things is social, emotional is big now. Having seen, how do I say this? Having seen how differences can make a difference in their education, and differences in social, emotional levels. Technology, students don't ask me the questions they used to. You know, like, I don't know, what's the lifespan of a three-toed sloth? Like, they don't ask those questions anymore because everything's right there. It's more about applying the knowledge and not filling their brains with the knowledge. And so like Lori said, you really have to be very dynamic in how you're presenting and how you're asking them to demonstrate that knowledge.
But then too, like as an ELA teacher, I had a colleague share with me the other day, it's like they were at home doing like their papers or whatever, so they're using the internet almost too much, to the extent that it's just mostly referencing internet materials, not necessarily their thinking. And that's something that we too need to work on, is working on building their critical thinking skills, and we want more of them and less of the internet per se. So it can be an over, you know, relying overly on the internet for some things. It's good to have technology, but at the same time, we have to teach them the fine lines and the boundaries. And yes, it's a great tool, but process that, talk about that. Let's, you know, have a discussion about it and not just parrot it.
So is the emotional component due to the fact that they weren't in school during a lot of the COVID time, or is it something else? Right down to the family, or, I mean, who knows, but do you attribute it to COVID or other factors?
I would say I know more about it now because of COVID. I'm more aware of it as an educator than I was before COVID. And you take a lot more of that into account when you're teaching than you did before.
I had a couple staff members mention that while we were in that first phase of COVID, when everybody, you know, the students were all home, the teachers were here, and we were, you know, we were teaching, and they saw things in the home life that they didn't realize existed. They saw maybe siblings bugging a child that's trying to, you know, focus on the lesson, and maybe the 8th grader was the sole person that was, you know, taking care of the younger kids at that point. You know, so they saw things that were just something, you know, that I think as administrators we know that kind of stuff happens, and teachers, I think, really open their eyes to it. Wow.
Or a middle school kid having to take care of younger siblings while they're trying to learn at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Connor said a couple of meetings ago, you know, they're seniors. They've spent almost their total high school career in you know, COVID. So it's very different than what, you know, even most of the teachers, we've been here for a long time, and that was just a little phase, but for them it was their entire high school education. So his comment really resounded with me. I was like, wow, you know, it's they're thinking differently than we are. Their needs are different than any group that's come, you know, before them.
So how would you assess overall the performance of your students relative to other schools in the state? I know that's a loaded question. I don't mean to be loaded, but I'm really curious to know what your sense is.
From all the studies that I've read, our kids are right on par with all the other students that I've read about.
Well, and the test scores echoed it last
Yeah.
year, the state test scores, the national test scores.
Yeah.
You know, everybody kind of took a downfall, and as did we, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really tough last year.
It's not abnormal here. I have been on Zoom with teachers from around the state, and we're all dealing with this.
Yeah.
And I think too, like getting back to the testing, getting back in the swing of things, it was like go. We implemented all the testing again, you know. So And then they had been like in isolation for so long, and we're back at school, and we're doing school, and we're doing academics, and then we're testing them, and it's like, I think they were just overwhelmed. I think that had a big part in the test results last year.
Over-tested.
Over-tested. We had to be careful, you know, testing is important, but, you know, especially our juniors last year had like so many tests, and God, you wanted to hide your face. Well, today we're gonna do star testing.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question.
So for our Fort Kent Elementary presentation, we actually have two groups here. You're gonna hear about one of the goals, which is centered around positive behavior interventions and supports, and we actually have the PBIS team here as well to kind of give you a little more in-depth look at what they're doing. But we're gonna start with the leadership team. You guys could introduce yourselves and get started.
Sure. My name is Amy Levac, and I teach kindergarten.
I'm Lynn Ford, and I teach grade 3. Kelly Markey, I teach upper elementary in the RISE program.
I'm Robbie Nettle, I'm the school principal. Join my team.
So in February of last year, all teachers were asked to complete a needs assessment survey, which basically asked for input on areas that we feel needed to have some improvement. And when the results were tabulated, our current reporting system, Empower, and our student management framework, PBIS, were number 1 and number 2. And we're gonna take you down our Empower journey, and we'll let the PBIS team take you down their journey. So we knew what our general goal was going to be. It was going to be Empower, but we needed to get down to the nitty-gritty to see what specific issues and concerns we had with it. So we met as wings, and teachers sat down and discussed these specific issues and concerns. And from these conversations, we came down with our 2 specific Empower goals. The first one was scoring consistency. In different subject areas, a score of 2 might mean something different in another subject area. Lynn's gonna speak a little bit more about that. And our other goal was parent involvement. We felt that Empower was not as parent-friendly as we would like it to be, and we really wanted to see increased parent engagement. So over the summer, we met again to talk about how we could best address our 2 goals, and I'm gonna hand it over to Lynn.
Okay, so picking up from where Amy left off, Empower itself left us with 2 different branches of issues to address. The first one, and the one that we were all feeling the same about, was the scoring was different across the subject areas. What do I mean by that? Well, our subject areas were clustered. So for instance, when a child went into a math standard, let's say, it was clustered between grades 3, 4, and 5, which was awesome because it allowed for a child to progress through those targets to get to the standard. So it really allowed for great differentiation. But with that being said, so we broke up the ELA. So we had talks about this and how can we make it so that parents understand the scoring. So we started with ELA, and we declustered the ELA targets. So if a child in 3rd grade was proficient in a learning standard in ELA, then they could achieve a score of a 3 or whatever. If they were partially proficient, it may be a 2. However, the same hadn't been done for math, science, and social studies. So there could be a child in my class that was in a learning progression within a standard, and they were at a 2. They had done everything right, and they were right where they needed to be, but because of time or because of whatever, they weren't going to get to the next learning target in that standard till maybe they hit Kelly in 4th grade. So parents may look at that too and wonder, is that because it's where they are in the progression, or is it just really partially proficient? So it left confusion, rightfully so. Teams were made, we worked closely with Sharon, and we declustered. math, science, and social studies following suit with ELA. So now our scoring is across the board. The clustering still exists for differentiation if we need to go there. But for parents, they can look at it and know that a 2 is a 2, a 3 is a 3, a 4 is a 4, and it's truly the same across the learning areas. Completed.
According to a grade level norm.
Yes, yes, for your 3rd grade standards, 4th grade standards, and so on. So that's wonderful. The next part of Empower that we needed to focus on, as Amy said, was how can we get parents using it a little bit more? What can we do? What are they thinking? How are they feeling about it? So open house, which took place in August, teachers had agendas that they shared with parents that came in, and Empower was on everybody's agenda. So the conversation started taking place and talks were had. November rolls around and we had parent-teacher conferences, and at that point, the office gave teachers every child's login information. So they had their passwords, their usernames, whereas before they had to go to the office to seek it, we now had it from the office to deliver to them. So that was given, and some teachers, especially in middle school, took it a step higher, and they actually walked parents through the program so they could see firsthand what it looked like. Parents that didn't come in, those papers were sent home via the student. Since then, we've had wing meetings, and in those wing meetings, teachers have had a chance to see the parent view of Empower when they log in as their child. When that was done, we did some troubleshooting because it was interesting for us as teachers to see what parents were seeing. So we kind of gave some feedback. What did we like? What did we notice was missing? What could be done a little bit differently? So that's been done. The last step that we've achieved thus far is we met as a team and we created a survey to go out to parents that will be going out through their emails to get their feedback. If they are using it, what are they liking? What are they disliking? If they're not using it, help us understand why and what we can do to help you. So that's where we are thus far.
And it does kind of look different in each wing, I guess, the expectations you have for Empower, because it's more so just reporting for parent at the younger level. However, once they reach C-Wing, a lot of the learners are in there and they're collecting evidence and they're putting it all. So it's in one place with the score, and parents can access that all in live documents or whatever currently they're working on. So not everyone's there yet, but that's what we're working towards. And that's going to be really, once we can get the parents in and comfortable using it, because there's a lot of hiccups right now with it. When we did start and took the parents through at the beginning of the year, it did look a little different, and they did have access to a progress report, just as you would see it sent home in the mail normally. We get it. Since that's happened, that's no longer available. That's where, yay, it's fixed, yay, okay, so we're back. So it's gonna be a big work in progress, I guess, as we go through and find kinks and work them out and get parents comfortable. We do have a handful in, but we need more, and we need their feedback, and it'll be nice, because now the kids too, as they get older, they're gonna know, ooh, mom and dad can go in and look at my work at any time. This is great. You know, so audience, right? So that's really, that's gonna be really good. That feedback that when we get back from the survey that we're gonna send out, we'll be able to work with parents and get them where they need to be. So hopefully at the next open house, that'll be a focus for us to get everyone comfortable in. That's gonna really open up parent communication as well, and encouragement from home, like to get their learners or their kiddos, okay, so I noticed this one is incomplete, how can I help you with this? So that'll be nice to get parents more involved with learning. At the, I'm talking more so at C-Wing level than I am the youngers, but they will eventually get there at some point too, so the earlier we get the parents on to check progress reports, the easier it's going to be for them once they hit C-Wing, and now it takes on a different entity of housing evidence of learning as opposed to just checking the score. Yeah, and I guess just this whole process is just going to be a continuous journey as we tweak and retweak as we go and work with Empower. There was one point that we logged at the beginning of the year, and it had taken us to a whole different, the parents were seeing the teacher end of it, and we were like, oh my gosh, that's confusing. So anyway, that's all been worked out now. So we're getting somewhere, and we're really happy with where we've gotten so far, and we can't wait to kind of see where we end up at the end of the year. So.
And the good news is it's a full year goal, so it's still a little messy. If I go into one of my kids, if I go into Abrams, and it'll say behind pace. So we met with Sharon today, and why does it say that? Because he's not behind pace. So those types of things that parents are going to go in, they're going to see that might kind of catch their eye, like why is that there? Why does it look like this? We noticed the progress report wasn't there as a button. Now it's back. So little things, but the survey will be going out, and we're excited to see what parents have to say.
And the new look of the report card, because that was a big concern talking to parents out in the community and stuff. They're like, oh, we don't pay attention to the score, we just read the comments. I'm like, that's not okay. You should be paying attention to the score. So I think that the tweaks that we're making on that too is going to make a big difference.
And it wasn't easy to see the scores in the report card that we're sending home, because part of it was we had different scoring for different subjects. So, well, 2's good here, but it's not good here, and how are we going to explain that to parents? So things will be more consistent, and I think hopefully we'll get more engagement with Empower. Sharon has been a huge help to us. We've asked her to do a lot of work with Empower. Splitting up those standards, she showed me the process a little bit today, is not easy. And she's done it all for us, and without complaint, and we're very, very fortunate to have Sharon. So a big thank you from Fort
Big thank you.
Do you guys have any questions for us? Ready?
Thanks, Dean. Good job. And the PBIS team, did you guys want?
Dave had
Oh,
one.
Dave had one? Oh, sorry.
How satisfied are you with the level of parent engagement? Or I guess, better phrase it, how much room for improvement is there in terms of
In terms of
parent?
Empower or just overall?
Well, overall, I think.
Well, I'll speak for third grade and B wing. We have wonderful response to conferences. We have the vast majority of parents coming in. We still have, I hate to say this, but I guess one of the good things of COVID is we still have, Zoom available, telephone conferences, so guardians don't have to come into the building. We can still contact and reach them in different ways, which COVID did bring. So that helps.
Mm.
But I think overall,
Yeah.
I'd say I'm very pleased with it.
And in terms of our school goal, we have a lot of work to do to get parents where we want them to be.
As
But
far as Empower.
Empower goes anyway,
Yeah.
as the school goal that we were talking about.
I know at our level, Empower, when I talk with parents at conferences, a lot of them go by the work that gets sent home, and we do a lot of communicating, basically because the kids don't really know who they are as learners. So I think, doing it that way through seeing their work, through contacting them if we need to with, successes or we need to work on this. I think they rely more on that than they would Empower, but we're kind of hoping to, change that a little bit.
So they have to understand what Empower's telling them.
Right.
And that's why we targeted the scoring consistency. That was a big piece, and that's completed, so we're hoping it helps in that area.
Is Empower used at the high school levels, in middle and high school? No.
Do you want me to answer that? Middle high is switched over to Power School. However, all the standards that were in Empower and all the scoring rubrics have migrated, not the rubrics themselves, but the standards are part of Power School. So when they create an assignment, they attach the standards with it. So the standard works themselves has not gone away, but the actual
Just the
reporting
tool.
is different. Most of the transition happened because of transcripts requirements for colleges. It was hard to produce that report in Empower.
Okay.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
And we do have the PBIS team that can talk about that second goal.
All right, so I'll go first. I'm Iris Gagne, and I'm a special ed teacher and a BCBA at Fort Canal Elementary School.
Miriam Bouchard, school social worker. Maureen Charette. I teach 2, 3, and 4 special education.
Kevin Anderson, Dean of Students.
And we do have some other members of our team, some regular education teachers too, but they're not here tonight. So basically, PBIS is positive behavior interventions and supports. It's something that's been around for a while, something that we've tried before, but it's really something that has now become a national push and especially a state push in education. Maine is actually pretty advanced in their coaching model and how they do it, and we're lucky to be part of that cohort. So we have a coach from the state level. She works between UMaine and the Department of Ed. And there's other schools in the state who are piloting PBIS again, but with the support of a system that makes it successful. So instead of just abandoning it, like has happened before, we're ready to get it all in place. So the main thing is that there's a lot of research that shows investing in teaching expectations is more efficient and effective than always disciplining or putting a Band-Aid on it. So the intention is we teach math, we teach reading, we need to teach students behavior. What is expected in school, how to be a good student, how to be a successful student. So that is our goal. Yeah, sure, you can click there, it's a good place to start. So a lot of stuff that we are using is stuff that we've developed before. So our 4 core values that you can see on the front of your newsletter, we had that in place before. That was a large process. I remember being on the team both here and the elementary school. We came up with these core values: respect, honesty, responsibility, engaged, and invested. And then we made this behavior matrix also already existed just for different times throughout the day. So what does it look like to be respectful during arrival? You're following routines, you sit down in the designated area, and everything is framed in positive language of what you're expected to do. This is what it looks like. So that way, like, instead of when we say, like, what's the morning routine, or when it comes to arrival, kids can know. And then eventually the goal is to say that you're being respectful right now, and they know that that's what that means. When I'm respectful, I am sitting, have a quiet voice, all of those things. So our team met over the summer and we did a lot of work. We kind of had 3 groups. One group was to make the standard operating procedures, and I'll talk about that because they're not here, so if you scroll back up. Sure. Yep, any of those. So throughout our building, there is SOPs, standard operating procedures, so kids know wherever I go, this is what I need to do. So for recess, 4 simple things, and they're all framed in the positive. Play where the teacher can see you, keep your body safe, slide and swing on your bottom, use kind and respectful words. Those things have a lot of different meanings, and there's definitions for all of them, but it's basic for the students. In the hallway, it's the same thing. I have a quiet voice, there we go, my hands are hanging by my side. And these are for students as a reminder, but also for teachers. So when I'm walking in the hall and I see a student who's looking straight ahead, I know I should say, hey, nice job looking straight ahead. So we're reinforcing those SOPs all the time.
Consistent language.
And yeah, so like the high school said, consistency is key. And they're talking about it from an academic point, but also for us. Like when they go to Mr. Delisle's phys ed class, or when they're transitioning to another place, it's the same thing. One important one that we also did was the noise meter. So like, no matter where they are in the building, if it's a level 0, they know what a level 0 is. If it's a level 1, level 2. So we had a group that did the hallway, or all of the SOPs. And then we also asked teachers to develop some in their classroom. And teachers were a lot of them were already doing it, because again, it's something that we've done before in the past. So they just kind of revamped it and used the same consistent language. And we're seeing a lot of success with that. Kids know what is expected, and so they're doing it. Another part of it is celebrating student success, or catching them being good, and Marion can talk about that. If you go to, there's not really much in the Warrior, yeah.
I have the actual tickets here, so we can kind of look at them.
So what we decided was that we want to capture our students when they're respectful, engaged, responsible. They can't ask for it. So us as teachers, bus drivers, cooks, we gave them to everybody. And what we said was, when you see a student doing something, give it to them. So do you want to pass them out? So you can show them what they look like?
Yes.
So the nice thing is,
If you go to
Yeah,
Yeah.
there.
So they would get the tickets and they could collect them. And at first what we were doing was we'd pull them out of the hat. And I was like, okay, I'm the most unlucky person. I will never get pulled out of that hat. So then we decided, let's do a warrior trading post. And what we did is we put little things in the trading post. But I want to stress, it's not about the prizes. It's about getting the teachers and staff to capture them doing positive things. It's the ticket, it's the noticing. That's what we're really about. This is just an added bonus.
Thank you.
You know?
Thank
So
you.
once a month, we bring it around, and the students can literally buy something with those tickets. And, pens, pencils, just school supplies. But we also added experiences. So we have eating with the police officer, eating with the principal, eating a meal at McDonald's. So we've really tried to incorporate and include the community, and they really enjoy it. So once a month, I get the sheriff or the police to come and eat with the students. And you know what? It's building relationships. They're really enjoying this. And I want to say every month I've had a few who have selected eating with the officer. So it's really been a positive experience, I think, for the children. And every month we try to do a little different, add things to the Warrior Post. But the kids I find they're kind of gearing more toward those experiences. So.
And there is a lot of research that shows that, like, as you make it experience-based, and PBIS really builds the community in your school, so as you add more of a community atmosphere, they're more apt to purchase those experience-type things, or like, I want to go back and eat with my second grade teacher, or something like that. So it really does get community involvement. And the other section that we worked on, it's under the teacher resources. Yeah. We did work on lessons.
Yes.
So for the standard operating procedures, they're not on there because it's a staff thing, but you can talk.
Yeah, so Iris and I met and we went over the specific SOP lessons. So again, consistency. So they're taught the same lesson no matter what class they were in. There was a little bit of difference in some of the SOPs based on wing and grade levels. And as you could see when you saw the voice meter, at the A-wing level, they had the pictures, whereas, more at the B-wing / C-wing level, it's more of just that hand gesture piece. So, depending on the grade and the level, some of the SOPs are just a little bit different, but the language is very similar. So again, as they're going down the hall, it's, okay, we're at a 1 right now, and they all know what that means, whether they're in pre-K or they're in grade 6. So that consistency, and the first few weeks of school, these SOPs were taught to the students in their classrooms, and they're being revisited throughout the year. So no matter what, these SOPs, the students are being engaged with them, engaged and invested with the SOP lessons. And they seem to be going very well, and I have seen such a huge change. Walking down the hall, it's so nice and quiet. And it's awesome to see, and these lessons are working really, really well.
And so the next step, kind of where we're at, and in our cohort in the state, we are kind of like a little bit ahead because we already had the matrix and stuff, so now we are ready to start taking data. So like Maureen says, it works so nice, we see it in the hall, now we need the data to back it. And then we need the data to be more specific. So we're getting 15 office discipline referrals from B-Wing recess on Tuesdays. What is it about Tuesday, and what can we fix? And really make sure that we're not just feeling like it's improving, but that the data is driving our decisions, and that we can use that data for what's the next target, where do we really need to focus. So that's our next steps.
It does really feel different, though. It really does. So kudos. And what's also nice is that this behavior matrix that we shared, that this doesn't end at Fort Kent Elementary. When they get to Valley Rivers, they have another version of this for Valley Rivers. Then when they get to community high school, they have another version of this for community high school. So that goes with them throughout their years here at MSAD 27.
And one piece on it is the, if you, on the newsletter on the back, there is a student and family survey, and we did that, and we'll see the results again in the spring. But overall, we had really high scores. Like Kevin and I were at a coaches meeting, and the coach from the state came behind us, and she was like, "Ooh, that graph looks really good." So overall, our kids feel like they're well respected and paid attention to for good behavior at school, and families feel the same. So that's good.
Any questions?
I think you get a Warrior Pride ticket for setting a 30% goal. That takes real guts, because you might not achieve it, you know. On the other hand, by setting the goal, you really make it measurable and make it real. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I guess a funny short story. I work at the pharmacy in Johns, and there was a young man there with his mom the other day, and he looked at her and he's like, "This should be a level 2 volume." And I didn't understand it. I thought maybe it's a cool parenting strategy. Glad that we had this presentation.
That's really good. It is nice to see there is some like I hear
Yes.
I hear it in town, and I hear like at home I use all of this with my son. So I mean, he doesn't just get it at school; he gets it at home. We need to be at a level 1 right now. And you can see that
we encourage it. We want
Absolutely.
homes to be able to use some of this stuff too. So at future parent conferences and stuff, we're planning on giving some parents some of these Warrior Pride tickets. And if the child does something really well at home, he should get a Warrior Pride ticket for that too, and bring it in, and he'll get credit for it here. It is a community thing. It's not just Fort Kent Elementary School. It's everywhere. So it's pretty good so far.
And we do have one of our board members is also on our committee too.
Yes,
So
yes.
we need to highlight Tanya. Thank you.
When I can log in.
3 o'clock is it?
Yeah,
It's a hard
it's a crazy time in daycare, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
You're all welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. The offer's on the table.
Item 7, superintendent.
I just have a few items just to briefly update you on. We did receive notification that we have received conditional approval of our pre-K expansion grant. Peter and I actually have a meeting with a couple of DOE reps on Wednesday to go over what this means. Right now, looking at what they've expected us to look at for budget-wise, the numbers just don't make sense to us. You're supposed to calculate your projected subsidy for having part of your pre-K years do a full-day cohort, and then subtract what you've asked in the grant. So there's a whole lot of math there that it's not clicking for me. And Peter came to me this morning and said that math isn't working for me either. So we're gonna ask some questions on Wednesday. Hopefully, it's just our misunderstanding about how that all works, because we're pretty excited to be able to expand pre-K if we can. However, if the numbers don't work and financially it just doesn't look like that's going to happen, we'll have more conversation with you about how to proceed. We do know that there were some schools in the last round that backed away from accepting the grant, and we don't know why that is, and if it's what we're seeing or what we're looking at, we may be asking you to do the same. But so right now it's just FYI, we've been accepted, but we don't know if that's really good or not, because we don't know what the numbers mean. So Wednesday, we hope to have more answers, and we'll report that back out to you.
So what we're hoping for is not to be penalized for wanting to accept this grant and expand the program.
Correct, exactly. Dave?
Ben, 16 is the proposed number here. If you got everybody, how many would be required?
If we got everybody,
Well, if you had a program available to all eligible pre-K students, how many would that be?
we're projecting how many pre-Kers next? 46.
46.
So there would be 1 full-day cohort of up to 16, and then 2 half-day cohorts of 15.
For us, spacing is the biggest issue. If we were to move to a full day for all, we would need 3 or 4 sections of pre-K, and we just don't have the classroom space at this time. Unless Mr. Neto wants to give up his office as classroom space.
Do it.
You're always asking for my office as classroom space, so. The other thing that I wanted to make you aware of is what our Valley Unified Remote Snow Day framework looks like. I did report out to you that our last snow day last week was not going to be possibly a remote day, just because from a food service perspective, they weren't ready, and that's at no fault to them. We just hadn't given Melanie all the green lights to be able to do that. But I think folks were just kind of excited to have a good old-fashioned snow day anyway, so it's not a bad thing. And it was a real legit snow day. I mean, that was a good one. So, sorry, not sorry. But you know what? If we do feel that it would be a good use of a remote snow day, this is the framework. This is what it looks like. And it checks all the boxes when you look at what the DOE requirements are for active learning and teaching and that type of thing. It's also grade level appropriate, so that what is expected in pre-K is not exactly what's expected from our seniors in high school. So I just wanted you to have that as a resource. And you'll also note that on the first page that we even have remote learning matrix that were built off of our behavior expectation matrix. So we even have taken our behavior matrices a step further in remote land, so that you can see what that looks like as well. But I did want you to have that resource in case people ask you.
Are they ready now? For like
they are. Yeah,
food meals?
we could call a remote day if we had to.
We have to.
Yeah. Aside from that, you have your administrator reports, one from Mr. Neto, one from Mr. Coletta, one from Ms. Kelly, and one from Mr. Sose. They are here if you have questions for any of them about their reports. Mr. Neto wishes to speak, Chairman.
I feel terrible about myself for missing this in my admin report. But we also started our Flash program up again. And that's our kind of our after-school program. I mean, there's knitting. We're going to have some career options in the spring. We're looking at possibly going to play. Just one of those things. After school, kids can stay. We have book clubs. We have games. There's all sorts of different things that we're offering. But we restarted it. It was something we did before COVID. We really enjoyed it. Ms. Lori Sose does most of the organizing of it. I would really say I have a very hands-off role, so all the kudos to her for it. And then the people that kind of volunteer or get paid to come in and do those classes. So really excited about having that. It's just that extra stuff that we can give kids beyond the school day. So late bus runs, Peter's a big help with that. That's how the kids get home, mostly through our business.
How long does the program go for after school?
It's an hour and a half. And some programs run every Tuesday, some are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so it really depends on what the staff member or the community member wants to do with it.
What does FLASH stand for, Mr. Neto?
Well, I'm not actually, I cannot tell you that off the top of my
I think
head.
it's fun learning after school hours.
Oh. Can you tell who came up with the
acronym?
I like the Flash program a lot. I used to go into Miss Lori Sose's classroom for a while. And she did career exploration at that point. And it was a cool program, like all the little, and I thought at first, career exploration at, for kindergartners, but they took to it. They thought that was the coolest thing to have like a sheriff in the classroom and learning about all these different things. And then they had a teacher and they had all these different presentations. So I think that's great and helps out with daycare that we so desperately lack in our town.
I know my boys have been loving it. Michael's in crochet and Thomas is in a game, does games, and they love it.
And the unfortunate part was at the end of December when we had the flu going around. There was another cold bug. It seemed like we had to cancel all these different nights and stuff. But But still, good reviews from the kids and parents, and despite all the obstacles that we had.
During that flash program, let's say a student wanted like extra help or tutoring or to do their schoolwork, is there anything offered like that?
We do have after-school tutoring, yeah. And Ms. Desjardins does her math club also after with the flash program, so.
Thank you.
How do you decide the programming?
So Lori does an amazing job of reaching out and finding people that want to come in and do different things. So I wouldn't even say there's she makes a flyer every, and I should have brought the flyer in, but she makes a flyer for every section, I guess, of Flash. So we did a winter section, we'll have a spring and then the late spring session. But she reaches out to people, or people hear about it and they offer to come in and do things. So I wouldn't say that there's a specific method or mode of deciding what goes on there. But really great stuff. It's not just academic, even though I could argue that crochet is.
It is.
Learning games, how to win and lose. You know,
Yeah.
some things that we know kids struggle with.
Thank you, Mr. Neville.
I had a question, and you can tell me if it's something that should be addressed later. Boombox, I'm familiar with the play. I wondered if there was anything being offered to the students who are part of that show, just because of the content. Boombox is 5 or 6, I think they're maybe high school, college-age kids, and they die by suicide.
Has anything been,
Are they, I was just wondering if there was anything in place for the students who are participating in it? As far as, I mean, it's a touchy subject, it can be emotional.
So the potentially emotional.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like,
that's a great idea. We haven't, you know, I guess trying to figure out what the best point would be to, you know.
I don't know, are you involved, Connor?
I am involved with the play, and I will say that we chose to do this play.
Yeah.
We had voted on it, so I think
Oh,
that
it's an incredible show.
I think that if there was any known problems that anyone had, it would have been addressed during the voting process. So.
You know, Doug works very closely with them and has, you know, I think really dynamic relationships with his actors and actresses, you know, we made aware, but we certainly will have, you know.
And I'm not criticizing the choice of the show, I don't wanna think we put it on, this will age me, I was part of the original production.
Yeah.
And it's really serious stuff.
Sure.
So that's why I was just curious.
Yeah, we'll definitely have, you know, that all, you know, we can talk to, you know, them individually and see if they, you know, but we, you know, got counselors on here.
Yeah.
Had some experience with this over the last couple of years, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up.
I also had a question. It says here that 25 students earned a score of C or better through their classes, but there were 73 enrolled. Is that possibly because they weren't actively taking classes, or are they struggling with those dual enrollment classes? It was the third paragraph.
Right.
There's two different things.
Well, it's for the second semester, they're, yeah, I'm just trying to,
I think
okay,
I think it's two different things.
73,
Yeah.
there's 25 that aren't, that are enrolled outside of our
Like
program
Pleasant
here,
Street.
that our teachers teach.
Okay.
Okay, so that's like more online or just at UMFK.
Okay.
So the 73 are dual enrollment courses
Okay.
that are taught here, like psychology, English Comp 1 or 2, the French courses.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so that, yeah, the other ones, you know, to me, those are a little tougher because, you know, they a lot of times it's online, and I think that's another level of
Right.
self-discipline, and so we're really proud of that number there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, all the numbers, but
Yeah.
those that go to that next level, I mean, I really think that they're, you know, ready for next year for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Committee reports.
Who loves policies? We had a policy committee meeting last week. We're trying to hammer out all the rest of those B section policies. And I do believe we fell short of a couple, 2, 3. So there will be a couple more coming at you. I've divided them up according to which ones are first read revised. So your first section there, BEDA, BEDD, BEDF, BEDG, BEDH, BEDI, and BG are all first read revised. There's some kind of revision in each of those. It's reflected in that greenish font that you'll see. We went through each one as a committee and made changes based on recommendations that were given at that time. So I'll have you just take a look at that for your first read, and then come back next time if you have any concerns about any of those revisions. But most of them are pretty straight across the board type of revisions.
Do you want any comments now?
I can, sure.
I just wondered on the minutes, the BEDG.
Yep.
Minutes of all meetings of the full board shall be mailed to all board members.
Upon request.
Oh, just upon, okay.
Upon request.
I was, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking we're getting them emailed. It's-
Right.
I don't-
I had to reread that as well.
Okay, just checking.
On the notification of board, it says at least 3 days prior. Is that?
Which one is that?
BEDA,
EDA?
first one.
Okay.
It says 3 days prior. Is that 3 business days?
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah. We
I
typically
was-
do a
I was
Thursday.
wondering.
We typically do a Thursday for a Monday meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's at least 3 days.
Then, on rules of order and voting method, it has 2 different formulas for calculating a 2/3 vote. One says 2/3 of those present and voting,
Yep.
and the other requires 2/3 of the full board membership.
Oh, yes.
So we should probably harmonize those in whatever direction the board wants to go.
Yep.
Good catch.
I think our conversations as a committee was, we favored the 2/3 of a full membership.
Right.
I guess I'd like to know which situations required the 2/3 vote.
Policy changes.
Policy changes.
Okay. That was it.
I think that's pretty much it.
Are we at a point yet? That's not how I want to ask this question. I don't know how I want to ask this question. I appreciated all the way through the he, she. I wonder if it's time to move to just using they, them, or just they, and so that it's completely non-binary and
In general.
in
across-
general,
Yeah.
throughout all of it.
The second section of policies are first read new policies. That's BEA, BEB, and IJJE. Oh, sorry, and I missed the IJJ. IJJ is also one of the revision first reads. It fell on the second page of your agenda. These are brand new. The first 2 were recommended by MSMA when they came to do our little retreat. They recommended the board have use of mail policy and use of social media. I know the committee did an awful lot of taking out some language that felt like it was waving fingers, thou shall not type language, so we kind of just kept it as matter of fact as much as possible. And that third one, IJJE, does go with your current IJJ. We just don't have a challenge of instructional material form for residents to fill out, or staff to fill out, if they want to challenge something that we offer. This is recommended that it accompany that. So again, those are all first read. Please feel free to offer suggestions via email to me or bring them for next meeting and we can discuss that further. The section 3 is policies for review only. That's your current policy BEDC, which is quorum, BEDJ, which is broadcasting and taping of board meetings, and BF, school board work sessions. Because these are review only, we could entertain a motion to adopt these as reviewed.
I'd make a motion to adopt the ones that are no recommended changes.
Motion by Sarah, do we have a second to Sarah's motion?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Luckton. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion approved.
And then your last section, section 4, are policies recommended to remove. The first one, BECE, which is the executive session law, it's a law. We don't need a policy that is a law. So that's the reason that we're recommending that one to be removed. Your second one, BG, goes along with BGB and BGE. All of those three got folded into the new BG, which you'll see in your first read. We folded them all in so that we don't have 4 separate policies. We have one policy that says it all. So that's why we're recommending removal of those. So if you're okay with removal, we would entertain a motion to remove those 4 policies.
So moved.
Motion made by Gary. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Sarah. Do we have any discussion? I do have one point about the executive session law. I know that's a statute, but I like the clarification piece within the policy. It really nails down specifics which pertain to our duties as school board members. So I don't know if you guys have had a chance to kind of think about that and kind of look through there and see how it really does offer clarification for new board members who might not be sure about the executive session law.
Could we reference it?
And maybe it doesn't need to be in
Like-
policy, maybe it just needs to be somewhere where
Right.
we can refer to it.
Yeah.
Probably during new board member orientation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe that's the
Just have
appropriate
it
place
as
for it.
guidelines.
Yeah. So, there we go. Very good.
I had one idea. When we revise the public participation, I think maybe it would be a good idea to stick it up there with the sign-up sheet. So that if someone signs up, you're agreeing to
Yeah.
follow our policy.
Perfect. I think we have a trifold that we had created that our handouts
Yes, we did.
that were based on that. We should definitely.
Like that.
Very good, all in favor? Very good, motion carries.
The second committee report, I'm just looking to put Keith and Sarah on notice that I'll be reaching out to you to schedule a brief meeting to look at some of the bathroom facilities in this building. We have some ideas and some recommendations about some of those facilities. Some are in rough shape, needing of updating. We just want to be able to get some ideas from the facilities committee about what your thoughts are about our ideas. So I'll shoot you guys an email, looking for a couple dates and times, and hopefully we can iron out something.
Okay.
Thank you.
Items of old business, MSAD27 strategic planning.
So yeah, last meeting, we did have the presentation from Jennifer Chase regarding the strategic plan, listening proposal that she presented. And at that time, the board chose to kind of table and just mull things over. I did send you the next day the expired SAD 27 plan, and the printout has small, 4 pages per page, so I apologize. But it gives you an idea of what our last plan, 2011 to 16, looked like. And then I also included our current tri-district strategic plan, which is our Valley Unified Plan. So I'm just looking for thoughts about how to proceed. I gave some suggestions in the notes. Obviously, it's the board's discretion on where to go from here.
What are your thoughts, Ben?
I thought that what was presented last meeting was unique. I thought it offered a perspective of what I heard the board talk about several times, including having an outsider come in and not have preconceived notions about the community or anything, just really come in with a fresh perspective. I liked the way that it involved not only meeting face-to-face if we have to, but reaching people at a level that is more flexible in the Zoom type formats, where you can capture folks differently and not require them to be on site. So I thought that was kind of unique. I think the AI twist of it, for me, that's just the geek in me that feels that that's kind of cool as well, that whatever is said in those listening programs will forever be embedded somewhere online that we can go back and see it. I just think it's a unique new thing. I'm not saying traditional strategic planning is bad, but when I look at our last plan, I don't know that that's very different than you see a whole lot of plans looking like for a great many of school districts. I just think that this new process would provide us the most independent type view of a really cool, neat way to strategic plan. So that's my thought. I like that proposal.
I agree with that as well. It kind of helps us not be repetitive and kind of just rehash what we've done already. And it gets that independent perspective.
I think we're just going through the motions every few years.
Right. Let's not keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
It was interesting reading through this one today, though, like just the similarities of where we're at, the differences of where we're at. There was a lot in here,
yeah.
and that was impressive. I'd taken some notes about just kind of things that jumped out at me that, like, oh, one of them was talking about students don't feel like they have an avenue to give feedback about teachers or courses or something, and it was like, huh. And then the other one was, the idea of a teacher rep on the board, non-voting member, but I mean, again, we have student reps on the board because we make decisions on their behalf. We make decisions on the behalf of teachers too. There was still some like good stuff in here. Like this was good. I think as we move forward, I remember, there's that student of 2050 or 20. I don't remember what you had done.
Portrait of the graduate.
Yeah, the portrait of the graduate in 2050, and the tri-district one, the last page, I was like, oh, okay, that's maybe a little far-fetched, but I think something like this would kind of take the idea of what this last page was trying to do, but actually make it realistic and like achievable.
Yeah.
So I would agree with that idea.
I really appreciated the opportunity to see it, read it.
Mm.
It struck me as very gauzy, very soft. I couldn't find anything in there that I could even think about disagreeing with, right? And I wouldn't say it was necessarily obvious, and it's useful to kind of dredge it up and say, look at it and say, oh, yeah. But, gosh, I can't imagine disagreeing with anything in that. The stuff that, the stuff that we need to talk about, that I would like to talk about, I won't say, I won't speak for others, is really hardcore, nasty stuff, in a way, in that it's very difficult. For instance, we all thought that we would have a unified school at Frenchville. We don't. Are we gonna have one next year? Is Frenchville gonna do something? What's going on with that? I would really like to talk about that stuff if we could do it without exploding, you know? Or stuff like, how has COVID affected the learning path of our students? And everything I've seen suggests it really has, and not in a good way. And how do we make up the difference? Or stuff like, are there alternatives to a central school? Can we explore the assumption that we need to centralize to save resources? Is a small school an option, particularly when we consider transportation costs and how that's changed, as we consider everything that's been learned as a result of COVID about remote learning? And maybe instead of having a school of 750 students, you could have a school of 70 students. I went to high school for 2 years that had 70 students. It was a really great place. A little bit crazy, but it was really great. Is that a model for us? Stuff like that, you know? But these are all very hard issues. They're difficult to discuss. But I maybe I'm naive, but I'd like to think that we could discuss these things. And ideally, we would even discuss it with an opening to Frenchville and Madawaska about what their thoughts are. Because we do have this Valley United, right? It's seems to be doing more and more of the school administrative stuff that goes on. I don't think that that issue has been buried by any means. Frenchville's, where does Frenchville stand? Have they been approved for new construction? Do you think they will, Ben?
I don't know.
Yeah, tough question.
It's a whole lot of no answers right now.
And if they were to do it, would they be building a small school? In other words, obviously they're not going to have a high school with 750 students, right? So if they were to build it for Frenchville, what would that look like? And does that make sense? I mean, that's not our problem, that's their problem, but really we have a very similar problem. And, you know, is that an option? Because one of the things that Fort Kent recoiled in our discussion with Valley United was the notion that we would lose a community school. And in fact, both planning documents talked about the importance of a community school. And Fort Kent wasn't ready to do that. You know, has that changed? Or how does Frenchville feel about that? And is it still possible to have a community school that's effective, delivers a very high quality program, and only have a couple hundred students, you know? So these are things that I think we could really benefit. Well, it would be, as I said, difficult, but I think it would be very beneficial for us to be poring over as a board.
I think you make some very valid points, Dave. Whenever we get around to the makeup of the committee, we'd have a committee, and I believe we'd have at least one board member for sure.
I would leave that up to Jennifer to make her recommendations, but I think at least there would have to be board representation for sure.
Right, so if you're throwing your name in the hat.
I'm sorry, for what?
Strategic Planning Committee.
Oh, yeah, no, I very much like to participate in that. But it wouldn't involve, it's a two-way street where, you know, we're asking for input, but I think it's also very important for the school district to export information. Because, let's face it, what does the community really know about the school? We have parents who know their child's experience, right? And they have strong opinions about that. But how well informed is the town council, for instance, about our school system? And what have we done to educate our community about our school system? It's not, there isn't a lot of good stuff happening here. It's just that, and there's a lot of work involved in exporting that information. But if you're going to ask somebody what their opinion is, you ought to be sure they have an informed opinion first, right? Mm-hmm. And my sense is in the community there's not a really strong, well-developed opinion about the school. except for individuals who have, individual experiences as parents or teachers or whatever. Just some thoughts.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add regarding the strategic planning process? Sarah?
I said my piece.
Very good.
Abby's almost gonna say something.
Yeah.
I don't know if now is the right time, but like I look at the last strategic planning process committee was done when I was in school, and so I look at the list of people that were involved and all great, but I think, and I've said it before, I think there are some missed opportunities as far as involving students. There are great students listed here, my sister being one of them. All great, all straight A's. And I think that that's great, and it's great to involve our, NHS kids, but that's not the majority of our student population. I think it makes up a great majority, and it's great that they're the ones that are always willing to volunteer and be involved, and that's awesome because I guess that was probably me too. But I think that it's important to sometimes seek out students that would never put their name into a strategic planning process, or students that might go way over their heads, but they might have something valuable to add about their experience, because unfortunately the experience of someone who goes high school and is in NHS and community, that doesn't exist, but natural helpers or all those great clubs, and they're involved in their school community, they can't speak for those students that have kind of fallen under the radar, or who might add value to talking about our school climate and giving some sort of opinion on it. So I just think that when we decide to start picking and choosing who's going to be a part of it, I think it's important to not always seek out not always seek out
The same demographic.
Yes, as far as our community too. Our community is made up of a huge majority of people who are different, but it's not always the best to have the same demographic for every committee and every school board and things, because you miss out on voices that won't be represented.
Correct. Yeah. When Iris made mention of it during the presentation, when we put the work into building the core values, we had a lot of stakeholder group involvement with this. And that's something Peter and I had conversations about, is making sure that we had the voice of the students most affected by behavior and rules and discipline in our schools. So we had the opinion of people that we really needed to hear from in that
because
process.
they're willing to talk about it, they're just not willing to go forward and say it.
Right.
If you ask, they'll give you their opinion, but if if they're saying, come to this meeting, kids, to tell us about your school climate, you're not going to get a good picture of.
You're absolutely right, Abby. And we did that one year. Tammy Bernier and I convened focus groups of students who were struggling in school behaviorally and academically. And we met with them during the school day. And we met with them in small cohorts and just asked open-ended questions. And just all we said is share the air, keep it respectful. And the information we got from those kids regarding school climate, and I mean, our failure and dropout rate today is significantly better than it was at that time, because we went right to the kids who were most affected by those issues and got some input. And you know what? They liked their teachers. They actually liked school, but they had some good concrete ideas about how to reach them. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Connor's gonna give us his perspective, and he'll tell us some things we don't wanna hear. Okay? Because Connor will be the first one to say, yeah, a lot of good things happening, but there's better things that could happen. I firmly believe that. Because he's not just gonna tell us what he thinks we wanna hear. But Connor functions very well in a school environment. Okay? He functions very well in any environment that he's in. That's not true of all of our students, and we need to not ask them to come to meetings after school. We need to reach them during the school day and not ask canned questions, but, very open-ended questions and hear the tough stuff. So I agree with you 100%, Dave, and kids will tell you, but they'll do it mindfully, they'll do it politely, and they'll do it respectfully. And honestly, that's the important thing. So I think that's a great idea.
Well, I think when there's no fear of repercussion, like a kid who's been sent to the principal's office, well, any principal here asks them, well, what's going on? Why isn't this working?
Yeah.
They can't, they're not, some might open up, but it might not be received well because they're now in trouble and now they're just expressing off their emotions. But in a month from now, you actually sit down with them and you ask, well, what isn't working for you? Because sometimes to them it's clear as day, but to us it's not, because we don't struggle with those things. The school board, we're not, we're all great and decent people, but we don't represent, no one from... There are some people that would never try to run for a school board seat because they're not, they don't think that their voice would matter. They don't think that, but those are the students that sometimes we need to reach more. So I think strategic planning is great, but sometimes it can feel a little like it's all positives and it's all agreeable and it's all great, but I'd like to hear from different demographics.
I did hear Jennifer say in her presentation that she would lean heavily on us to help her pick that team.
Right, because she
So
wouldn't know.
We'll have to dig deep and make sure that we get a lot of voices that we normally wouldn't hear.
You could get the 40% that didn't respond to the survey. Remember the survey you cited?
Start
Because
knocking
it's
on doors.
Very high grades. What about that 40%? Those are the folks we could really learn hard stuff from.
Right.
So I think you've got some pretty good feedback, Ben. I think from my perspective, I think option A was what we were proposed with at the last meeting, having that independent facilitator will probably point us in the right direction if we can kind of give her some guidelines and people to fulfill the committee positions.
Is that something you need a motion and a vote and all of
It
that?
sounded like a motion.
Okay,
Somebody want to make a motion?
yes. For,
Shannon made the motion to
proceed with the MSAD 27 strategic learning proposal as presented.
Very good. Seconded by Ms. Poehler. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? Dave?
I'm abstaining. I don't think it's going to advance, frankly, the effort in a meaningful way, but I don't have a strong feeling about that, and I don't want to stand in the way of the board.
Okay, very good. Motion passes. New business, items for information, retirements. We have one.
We didn't think it would ever happen. But you do see that Mr. Doug Clapp has provided his notice of intent to retire at the end of this school year. It does reflect, and he did come to speak to me on this as well, he would love to stay connected to the drama program as best that he could. Is hopeful that we could find a replacement for him that's qualified and all that, but would still like to be involved with that as much as he can. And I said certainly. We would never ask him not to do so. But he will be retiring from the classroom next year.
Do we have a motion to accept Doug Clapp's retirement notification?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Sarah, seconded by Gary. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion accepted. To approve the, let's see here. We have a FKES education technician.
Yep, and I did put an updated letter on the table for you. Ms. Lynn Sear has provided her notice as well to retire at the end of the school year. She's been part of 2 school districts in the area, spending some time in Madawaska as well, and did come back to SAD27 a few years ago, and has enjoyed her times. But Ms. Lindsay will also be retiring.
So moved.
Motion made by Sarah, seconded by Abigail. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion approved. CHS VRMS EdTech.
We did get an email notification, and I'm sorry, I don't have a copy for you all. It was sent to Mr. Coletta that Tiffany Reese, who was actually approved last meeting, has decided that it was just not a good fit for her to spend any more time as an Ed Tech 1, so she has given her her resignation.
Motion to accept the resignation.
So moved.
Sarah, seconded by Gary. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting this resignation? Motion approved.
And it's not reflected in the agenda, I apologize, but it just so happened that one of our current Ed Tech one-on-one, Miss Josie St. Germain, her student is leaving, the one-on-one that she was with. So Josie actually requested a transfer to this vacancy, so we accepted that transfer. So Josie just slid into that vacancy, so everything worked out in that aspect.
New hires.
You have a letter of recommendation from Ms. Stacy Sear. She is recommending Olivia Michaud for the Early Learning Center Childhood Assistant. That's at the Chippy Center. Olivia comes with some experience working at Fish River Rural Health and Cary Medical, and is very excited to work with children. So that's the recommendation Ms. Stacy's bringing for you.
Do we have a motion to approve the hiring of Olivia Michaud?
So moved.
Ms. Sarah, seconded by
A second.
Ms. Wazin. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion approved. Current openings.
We still have our CHS night custodian opening. That's due to the fact that Jeffrey Taggett left us at the end of December.
No applicants.
I believe we got one today. Somebody came in to apply today.
All right, 2023-24 school calendar approval.
So there's a couple of documents that go with the calendar. One of them is a survey. Every year we survey the staff. This survey is sent to the 3 school units. As you know, because we share a tech center, we have to have a common calendar with the partners that we share a tech center with, and there cannot be more than 5 days of discrepancy. That's just a rule across the state of Maine for anybody that shares a technology center or a region. So we sent this out, and these responses are showing the SAD27 responses, and a majority of the requests in the survey have been reflected in the calendar, and it's uniform with 33 and Madawaska as well. One thing that we did make a change for next year, and this is based on the data we've been collecting for our early releases. Currently, as you know, our early releases all fall on Friday afternoons. Our attendance for staff and students are low on those Fridays and Friday afternoons. And for whatever reason it is, I just feel that, we feel that it provides an opportunity for an extended weekend, which is great. I've taken advantage of that before, I'm sorry. But when you are that teacher that always has Friday afternoon classes, the high school does a good job at flipping those days. But I'm trying to think of me being a 5th grade teacher. I always have phys ed on Friday afternoons. My kids never go to phys ed on Friday afternoons, once a month. So what we decided is put a rotation of early releases. So September's early release would be on Monday, October will be on a Tuesday, December on a Wednesday, so it's just a rotating early release rather than targeting the same day. We actually had this 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and it worked well, but we also had the alternating late starts, which didn't work well with parents, so we stuck just to the early releases. So that's the biggest change. Aside from that, it's going to be an early graduation next year. You'll see that our graduation falls on the 7th of June, which means that we would be out of school, barring no significant snowstorms, the following week on the 13th. This is shared with the teachers' unions to them to provide feedback to us, and we've had that opportunity to do that as well.
I think there was some feedback in the surveys about the Tivoli trip and how
Yep.
that went this year. I think it was a little different.
Yeah, they want to target the 2 days before harvest break, so they wanted to make sure that no workshop was placed right before the harvest break, which we've done before. So we put the workshop right after harvest break instead.
Make a motion to approve the school calendar for 2023-24.
Motion made by Gary. Do we have a second? Seconded by Dave. Any discussion about the school calendar? Seeing none, all in favor? Very good. Calendar approved. Okay, emergency management plan, 2023-24 approval.
So again, I did not print out a copy of this just because it's massive. I did share the link with all of you, so we're looking at the Fort Kent Community High School, Valley Rivers Middle School. This actually came from a template shared by Aroostook EMS. They shared a template several years ago, and we had Paul Chassis, who is the safety coordinator in Madawaska, work on the 27 plan, the 33 plan, and the Madawaska plan. This was a few years back. We actually contracted Paul to do that work for us. This includes not only the updated information on contacts and all of that, but it also is the response plan for a number of responses, including pandemics. Who knew that that was in there, but it's in there. And that's been updated quite a bit since then, but every emergency that you can think of, from chemical spills to fires to obviously active shooters, it's all part of this plan. It includes letter templates, you know, in the event that you have a passing of a student, there's letters there of you know, how you can address that with the community. It's quite a comprehensive document, to say the very least. As an admin team, we've been meeting, we meet monthly for our admin meetings. This has been a rolling agenda item just so we can revisit some things. Our next admin meeting next month, we're actually going to do a tabletop activity. Peter Sosi and I participated in a tabletop with Aroostook EMS, and we had the police, Fort Kent PD, the fire department, EMS, we had the Border Patrol, Sheriff's Office. Everybody was there, and we just went through an active shooter tabletop activity about how the school's going to respond if this happens. How does the PD respond? How does the ambulance service respond? And we had some good conversations around that. And so from there, we're taking that to a school level. We're going to have a tabletop activity at a school level and talk about our responses within, just so that we can better prepare ourselves in the event that we have, heavens forbid, we have you know, an incident like that. But all of that is inclusive in here. It's a good resource for us to have. Hopefully, we've addressed all of the updates, contact information. We've had some changes since the last version, so making sure everyone's contact information is updated in there, and all the roles are assigned accordingly. We wanted just to share this with you. I've shared this with Fort Kent PD, so they have a copy of it. I've shared it with the fire department. I've shared it with the EMT service. So everyone has our plan. We had conversations around what are our evacuation areas. Now everybody knows and has the plan so that they can access that when they need to. But I wanted to share that with the board and hopefully get your approval on our up-to-date plan. Any of you read all of that information? There's a lot, there's a lot. But we've gone to it quite a bit in the past 2-3 years for various announcements and emergencies that we've had. And so it's been helpful.
So anything from burst pipe, no hot water to the building, how do we react to that sort of situation, to chemical spill, to lockdown?
Yep.
Obviously
Our active shooter protocols are the ones that are most up to date. And this plan outlines our ALICE protocols. And even ALICE has changed since we first implemented it. But it has all of our, ALICE protocols. So when do you shelter in place versus when do you evacuate versus when do you, attack and distract the intruder. So all of those things are all in there as well. And the board didn't know we were an ALICE certified school, so every year our staff does an annual training on the ALICE protocols and then has activities with the students. It's been a few years since we had a ALICE activity with students. So we're in discussions about maybe something like that happening in the springtime. Just where we walk through on the different protocols.
Ben, why would you walk through that with the students? Presumably so it would work better?
Yeah, so.
What about the downside risk if they're traumatized?
So when we're doing something like that, we always have an age-appropriate scenario that we do it around. So at the elementary level, it's not about active shooter. It might be there's a black bear in the playground, and we have that type of thing. So it's all age-appropriate on how we address that.
I think it was a dog loose. My son came home like, yeah, there was a dog loose in school. That's what they had used.
Yeah.
But I think if they're old enough to understand what an active shooter is anyway, they're already traumatized and worried about it, and knowing that the adults in their world have a plan to take care of things, it's got to help a little.
We had a blast when we had police force here and as a staff, and we had to try to barricade in place, and we were trying to keep Derek Cooper was trying to keep the door closed. It was just a blast, And then we had tennis balls, so when the intruder made through, you have to distract them, and so there's a lot of it's a serious topic, but the training is worthwhile so that you can wrap your mind around what that could and what it would be like if that were to happen.
Make a motion to approve the emergency management plans for CHS VRMS and Fort Kent Elementary School.
Motion made by Gary. Do we have a second to his motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Vazin. Do we have any further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor? Motion approved. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
We start talking about budgets next time we meet.
Gary?
Lucy's really excited.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Gary made the motion, you seconded it.
Dang it.
All in favor of adjourning?